Hey, we are live. It is week one. The NFL season started last night, but we're here to talk 49ers Seahawks. I'm Andrew Pasquini, Jason Aponte, as always. Sprint Red Option Podcast. We are joined by Bryce Coots of the Hawks Eye Podcast up in Seattle. We're going to get some insight from behind enemy lines, as they would say. I'm very excited to talk week one of the football season. Jason is too. I'm sure Bryce is as well. Bryce, I start always with Jason by just asking, how are you doing today? It's a lovely Friday morning up there in Seattle, Friday afternoon in New Jersey, where Jason is. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, guys. I really appreciate you guys having me on, and I'm really looking forward to talking 49ers Seahawks in this week one matchup.
I love that. Yeah, that's what we're here for. I wanted to start. My first question has nothing to do with the Niners Seahawks game, more to do with the Chargers Chiefs tonight. How pissed off would you be if the Seahawks lost a home game to a divisional rival like the Chargers are losing tonight against the Chiefs?
I would be very upset in that regard. And to me, it's just like I get this whole thing that they want to do, travel and international games and all that kind of fun stuff. But the biggest thing with these divisional games is home field advantage does play a massive component to it. Mm-hmm. And I'm more of the idea of when you're doing these international games, do them with teams that you don't play or you play every 4 years, right? We know the NFL schedule rotates and you get a new comp or a new division every 4 years. Like, the Chargers should be playing like the Saints or something like that, where there isn't going to be as much of a implication. I get from the NFL, they're going, oh, it's divisional. It means there's going to be so much more, but you're playing in a weird place. You're playing on a surface that isn't normally used for football, for one. And we saw last year with the Green Bay Packers and Philadelphia Eagle game, that played a massive component in that game. So I'm not the biggest fan of it. I think it shorts out the fans of getting the experience they want and what they're paying for when they pay for like their season tickets, for example.
They did it with the 49ers in Mexico, but thankfully it was against those terrible Arizona Cardinals, so the 49ers just handled business. Like it really wasn't a thing or anything like that. But I'd be pretty pissed when you look at the divisional race, and the AFC West is shaping up to be one of the best divisions in football. To have one of those games be on, in Brazil, like it's a great idea. I understand trying to grow the game and all that stuff, but I agree. I don't want it to be a divisional game or anything like that. Like, make that Chiefs Jets or, but I understand, this is the reason the game hasn't grown in London is if you want it to grow, stop sending the shitty Jacksonville Jaguars over there. Like, I mean, like, how are you supposed to get them involved and excited when you send a terrible product over there? At the same time, you have to agree, all that stuff. That's fine. Honestly, we can bicker about this all we want. I'm just happy back-to-back days of football and another day of my parlay being cooked by halftime. I can't wait. Like we are so back.
Oh, don't even talk to me about last night and AJ Brown. He probably has sunk my fantasy team this week solely by his performance. I was coaching football and I'm like, oh, I'll check and see. Like, AJ Brown's got to have at least 12 points, right? Something like that. I look and it's like 1.1. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, did AJ Brown not play? Like, I'm like, is he injured? I'm scrolling through. No, I just decided AJ Brown wasn't a part of the offense anymore.
What's funny is I got lucky enough that, I have a ton of Saquon Barkley shares. So that's all I was really looking. And I have Devonta Smith, but it's funny, the 4 drops from CeeDee Lamb would have resulted in like an extra 11, 12, 14 PPR points. Like he still had a great game, but my goodness, those drops sunk them. But, whatever, man. Who cares about the damn Cowboys and the Eagles and Spitgate?
Hey, that was a fun way to start the season. That was my next question. Which defensive tackle is most likely to spit on the opposing quarterback on Sunday? No, obviously joking. Hey, 49ers, Seahawks. Both teams kind of have gone through, more so the Niners and the Seahawks, kind of a roster turnover, Bryce. The Niners have changed a few things, especially on the defensive line. Seattle obviously has the new quarterback in Sam Darnold, former 49ers legend, might I add. Which new addition to Seattle, outside of Darnold, because I think everybody's watching Sam Darnold, are you most excited to watch for the 2025 season? There's a few options there, but I'm curious to see what you think.
Well, I know everyone would expect me to pivot to Cooper Kupp. That'd be the obvious choice outside of Sam Darnold. I'm actually super excited to see what DeMarcus Lawrence does in this defense for Mike Macdonald. I think, we've had a bit of a rough string here with Uchenna Nwosu not being able to stay healthy. He had the Wyatt Teller injury last year in preseason. Year before that, he had the shoulder injury. It's just been an ongoing set of setbacks for him since he signed his contract extension after his breakout year a couple seasons ago. And so it's really affected our run defense in a lot of ways. We haven't been able to set that edge. Boy Mafe is a good run defender, but he kind of hit and misses as a pass rusher. Derek Hall is kind of the opposite. He's a better pass rusher than he is a run defender. So we've kind of had this mix and match, try and find the right kind of mixture to get that run defense going. And the interior's fine. We've got Byron Murphy, you got Leo Williams, you've got Jaron Reed, and obviously the linebacker additions that we made last year. So for me, it was really exciting when they did sign DeMarcus Lawrence, because even though he may not be the same pass rusher he once was, and we saw in Dallas, his run defense is still elite and still one of the better run defending edges in the NFL. And so I think him coming in could have the biggest impact for that defense in solidifying that front seven in a way that we're not, that we haven't had here in Seattle for a few seasons now.
Yeah, I'm not shy about my praise of the Seattle defense, right? Bryce, I was on your show, and remember, this was right before Ricky Pearsall was activated, so it's documented a long time ago. You said, what's the one thing that scares you is this defense? And I wrote an article on NinersNation.com, and I started to look at last season and where Brock Purdy and this offense struggled against coverages. And I'm talking about the passing game. Obviously, the run game is going to remain the same and them trying to do that. But last season, it seemed like more turnover-worthy throws were coming against man-to-man. And I attribute that a little bit to, one, the game plans that Baltimore, Mike McDonald, and Kansas City laid in 2023, but the lack of separators, right? The lack of pure separators, like a dominant X. And again, we don't know what that's going to look like. We hope it's Ricky Pearsall this season. Brandon Ayuk's not going to play in this game, and he's the obvious answer. We don't know what we're going to get. That's the part that I get a little skittish about with this game, is the way that Mike McDonald's going to be able to disguise things from man to man, because you can disguise zones, but you really can't send blitzes that way, because you're moving one guy out of an area, you throw the football into that area as soon as it's coming that way. But it's going to be interesting to see how Juwan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, if Ricky Pearsall is that X separator that we believe he is, that really can back off of the things that Mike McDonald can do with that complex scheme that he has. Again, we say this all the time, is yes, the blueprint's fine, but you have to have the roster to actually, put it together. And now I think they do. So I think, again, the only thing that, if I was worried about anything, is how much separation are these receivers going to be able to create on their own without it being Kyle Shanahan, scheming those guys open, and how much that allows Mike McDonald to remain complex, maybe put him on his heels a little bit if they're starting to find some creases and they're starting to find some guys who are getting some wiggle on those secondary members.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. It's going to be an interesting matchup this Sunday, because the one thing Seattle has struggled with in a lot of respects, secondary-wise, is staying consistent in what they do and not being as vanilla. And I think last year what you saw with Mike McDonald's defense is that first half of the year, because the linebackers and Dotson and Baker were such a abysmal unit, you saw teams like when you guys came up to Seattle completely and utterly pick us apart and get massive separating gains for Kittle. You had different guys in there. CMC was a huge part of that at a point, right? So it's going to be really interesting to see how Seattle handles that going into this game. The one player that'll be interesting in the secondary, and a guy I'm going to be very keen on watching throughout the entire season for Seattle, is Reek Woolen. He's in a contract year. He wants to get paid, but there's been consistency issues for the last 2 seasons in Seattle. One was due to injury in his sophomore season. Last year, he got benched. He struggled to be consistent. Mike McDonald even put that out on a press conference that, hey, this is what's going on with Reek. We got to find a way to get him consistent and get him constantly focused on the game. So there's those aspects to it for me where I want to see, can Reek actually be a shutdown corner? Because we know what we have in Devin Witherspoon. And I project that Witherspoon might actually get better this year because of the new addition to that secondary and Nick Eamon-Wari taking some of that nickel pressure off of Devin Witherspoon.
You talk about the Seahawks secondary. The Niners receiving core is going to be vastly different than anything you've really seen the past couple of years. I looked it up last night. Since Purdy took over the starting role in 2023, 34.7% of his completions have gone to either Deebo Samuel or Brandon Ayuk. Deebo Samuel now out in Washington. Brandon Ayuk not going to play on Sunday, obviously, with his knee injury. What is, I guess, your perception of the weapons the 49ers have? Not just your perception, but also Seahawks fans, of no Ayuk, no Samuel. Yes, there's still Kittle. Maybe there's McCaffrey. We'll talk about that in a second here. But what's the perception up in Seattle of these Niners weapons now that there's no Deebo Samuel or Brandon Ayuk to kind of attack the two main attackers on this 49ers offense the past few years?
I think the Deebo Samuel thing is a more of a sigh of relief now in Seattle because the way Kyle Shanahan would use Deebo. And that's nothing against Brandon Ayuk, but when you'd see Deebo line up in the backfield as, a running back next to CMC, and you're going, okay, who's actually getting the ball here? Like, Deebo was such a weapon in a lot of ways for that Swiss Army knife, which sometimes can be hard to account for, especially when we had a Pete Carroll defenses up here.
Bryce, real
Jason?
quick, let me jump in so I can let you. You hear that, 49ers fans? Do you hear how someone else is talking about Deebo Samuel, and you see how much they are afraid of him? I just wanted to point that out real quick. Thank you, Bryce.
Because Deebo was that Swiss Army knife for you guys. And the amount of times he'd take a jet and you'd see him go 30, 40 yards down the sideline, and just his yards after catch was so frustrating because he'd catch such a simple route and turn it into such an impactful play. And I think a lot of what Deebo did well actually made George Kittle more effective too, because of Deebo's ability to go over the middle and run those over routes and those unders, and even those like pokers, those post sits in the middle, allowed Kittle to kind of run free because linebackers had to get deeper in their drop to kind of take that away, or they were trying to figure out where was Deebo coming from. And so not having Deebo there, I think gives a lot of sigh of relief, because who replaces that production? You like we said, we'll talk about it in a bit in CMC, but he's not that guy. You can't have him do a lot of the same things Deebo did. Brandon Ayuk isn't there to kind of be the guy that would help take the top off of defense in some respects, and he may never be that guy again. So from a Seattle perspective, I'm more worried about Kyle Shanahan figuring a way to scheme guys open than I am about the guys you have beating us man for man. That's kind of how I look at it now. And because Kyle Shanahan is such an innovative play caller, we've seen it year in and year out. That's what's more worried. If he knows what he's got to deal with, and how am I going to create mismatches through scheme, through concept, to get guys open and frustrate defenses that way, because I don't have guys that can do certain things anymore.
Bryce, 3 letters, MVS. That's how we're going to do this, all right? 3 letters, all right? Just 3 simple letters. No, look, I love the perspective that you're giving, because it's from a nuanced, way, and X's and O's and understanding, right? All those things, right? So my contention is this: we don't know what Juwan Jennings is going to be in this game, right? Like, he will play what, per Kyle Shanahan. Funny how that calf kind of just, it all of a sudden it's magically healed. But he will play, but he's not an X separator. He may play X for a little bit, and they may use to, Ricky Pearsall as a little bit more of a chess piece and get him advantageous matchups. But I'm of the mind that I do believe that MVS can have an impact on the team without having an impact on the box score. Having him run a bunch of clear out routes at X, he still has that speed as well too. That can open things up over the middle for Kittle and those backside digs for Pearsall. So I do think there are ways that Kyle has been crafting all of this stuff, even if he didn't have Juwan Jennings. And I think that there is a way to unlock Juwan Jennings' efficiency with less snaps, right? Like putting him back in that big slot role and having him back in that third and Juwan clutch red zone, type of role is probably better than trying to force feed him a bunch of targets off of, his calf injury and not playing the entire preseason, and having him at X. So it is going to be interesting how they mix and match. Obviously, I know where Andrew's going with this next segment, so I'm going to let him lead into it because, you already kind of mentioned it, but it's going to be interesting to see how he does this because, it went from literally, oh my God, Russell Gage and Ricky Pearsall are going to be starting to, man, who the hell is going to be starting at this point and going to be actually playing? Because all of a sudden yesterday we get the news that the 53 and the practice squad are in there, and then, whatever, we get the McCaffrey stuff. Yeah, Bryce.
But Jason, there's one crucial receiver you have not discussed that is going to be the guy that's going to unlock the 49ers offense, and that is Sky Moore.
Oh,
he is the missing chess piece for you guys. He beat you guys when he was down there in Kansas City, and now he's come to 49er land, and he's going to completely reinvent your receiving core. Watch him go for 1,000 yards this year.
That should be the selling point for the Niners fans this year. Is we got Sky Moore.
I harken back to the time where we signed Anquan Bolden after he beat us with the Ravens, and we were like, that's the missing piece. It's just getting the guy from the Super Bowl that beat us, and now we're ready to go.
They should have done Mahomes instead of Sky Moore, but that's just me.
That's just me.
So yeah, let's talk about it. The injury report We got such good news as Niner fans yesterday morning. Everybody was practicing. We're locked and loaded. We're good to go. And then right around kickoff of last night's game, we get the news that Christian McCaffrey's calf has popped up on the injury report. He was limited in practice. I don't know if it's necessarily the biggest story because it is limited practice. However, there's some PTSD with last year with us finding out that McCaffrey was unhealthy about 90 minutes before opening kickoff. But Bryce, as you mentioned before we went on the air, Seattle had one of those yesterday as well at a position that I was looking into it. There's a lot of new pieces on this offensive line for Seattle. And right guard Anthony Bradford popped up with a back injury yesterday, kind of like McCaffrey did yesterday. So I know how Niner fans feel about Christian McCaffrey popping up on the injury report. I saw plenty of reaction on that. Let me get your reaction on McCaffrey popping up on the injury report first, and then I want to hear your thoughts on Anthony Bradford popping up on your side of the injury report.
Totally the same thing.
So for me, with Christian McCaffrey, it sucks. Like, I don't want to beat the 49ers without Christian McCaffrey being suited up and being able to play. I'm never one of those guys that, gets excited. Oh, a guy's injured. Like, if I'm going to beat a team, and especially a division rival, I don't want there to be an asterisk beside why we won is because, so-and-so was out of the lineup. So I hope he ends up playing. I hope Christian McCaffrey, actually has a healthy season this year and can kind of get back to being the player that he was, because he's a special guy to watch when he's on the field. And I've always liked CMC's game, even when he was down, at Stanford and then obviously in Carolina. And what he's done, he's been a nightmare for us to deal with. But that's kind of the fun for me as a football coach and a football fan, is seeing how our team's going to take away the other team's best option in that game. So the one thing that does concern me about it is where it's located on his body. Again, we're talking near that Achilles. We're talking the calf area. We know what these can sometimes lead to for other players, where it's like, oh, it's a calf injury 1 week, 3 weeks later, pop goes the Achilles, and now they're out for the season. And that's kind of the concerning factor. So I really hope he's okay and that he does end up playing. So that's kind of how I look at it. And again, it changes your guys' entire offense when he's in the game, same as when Trent Williams is or isn't in the game. It completely changes how Kyle Shanahan calls games, what they're able to do successfully and what they're not. So I don't think Brian Robinson's going to be this magical answer that if he's back there, you're going to be doing the same stuff in that offense. So it's nice to have him as a backup and a change of pace guy, but CMC is who I want to see when you guys suit up in week 1 here. I do want to see him in the game. So on the Anthony Bradford front, and to your point, Andrew, the Seattle O-line, this might be the best O-line we've had in over a decade. Just from young pieces. We just signed Abe Lucas yesterday, which too, I think, was a great deal for us. When it, in a couple of years, we look back, we're going to be going, hey, we're getting a guy that's potentially, a top 10 right tackle at money that's like a top 15, top 20 right tackles, right? Even with the incentives that go into it. Anthony Bradford was kind of an interesting piece and story in Seattle training camp and offseason this year because of the switch to the Kubiak scheme in the wide zone. Anthony Bradford is a bigger lineman. Like, he ran a lot of power gap stuff at LSU. He's very athletic for his size. Like, coming out of the draft, he was one of the highest rated athletic scores for the guard position. But he's kind of been this guy that can't stay healthy. And then when he's out there, as I'm sure you guys have seen the memes of, hey, look, Anthony Bradford's lost in space, basically, because he's just kind of all over the place, not being able to do much. And something clicked this offseason for Anthony Bradford because he came in leaner. He came in with a renewed sense of, I think, focus on like, hey, this is my shot. It's year 3 for me. If I don't do this because I'm a third round pick, like I'm in a contract year next year, like I have to do something. And he had Christian Haynes nipping at his heels, who we drafted last year as our third round pick. That kind of, I blame more of the Ryan Grubb, Scott Huff offense for that issue up until this offseason. And so Christian Haynes was supposed to kind of come in and compete with Bradford, and Bradford blew him out of the water. Like, it wasn't even a competition in camp. There are people now calling Christian Haynes a bust, even though he's designed for this wide zone scheme, and that's what he was rated for coming out of the draft last year. So then to see this back injury pop up for Anthony Bradford like 2-3 days before the game, I'm going, this is horrible, because we had finally gotten some continuity. We saw what this O-line could do versus the Chiefs in the one drive for the starting O, and it looked phenomenal. Like, Bradford's moving the guys down the field. He's looking good. And the other piece to this O-line I'll just add is Jalen Sundell. And he's kind of going and flying under the radar. He was a UDFA we picked up last year out of North Dakota State. I was super high on him when I saw him. I was like, this guy might be like one of those UDFAs you find and you kind of go, holy crap, like we found our starting center for the next 10 years in Seattle because he just fits what we want to do and he's aggressive and all those things. And so the problem now is if Bradford's out, our starting center in Sundell now has to kick to right guard and Olu Oluwatimi comes in at center. That's the change that happens because our two guards behind Gray Zabel, our rookie we drafted, and Anthony Bradford, realistically, are Mason Richmond and Bryce Cabledew. They're rookies as well. And while I think there's bright futures for both of them, they're nowhere near being ready to step in and play the 49ers week one of the regular season, first games as rookie, because they struggled throughout dealing with 3s and 4s in preseason. So they're great development projects and guys that you want to see kind of grow throughout the season. But the fact if we lose one guard that we're now kicking our starting center over to guard and bringing in our other center, that is a concerning factor for me.
You know, starting with the McCaffrey thing, we've been looking for Kyle Shanahan to evolve, right, and change things up, and I think I figured it out. It's outright lying about this calf to like blindside Mike McDonald, right? Like with him just coming off of at the bench and everything as well too. Like you're very sneaky, Kyle. Like I see your 5D chest. No, look, Tom Pelissero went on NFL Network today. He said it's not DEFCON 1. I'm not sure what the order of DEFCONs are. I don't want it to be any of them, you know, DEFCONs, but he didn't seem too worried about it with the people that he spoke with. There is that PTSD factor, but this is a season where we've talked about it over and over. The 49ers can't afford to not have McCaffrey, Kittle, Warner, Bosa, Trent Williams, Diamador Lenore, Brock Purdy. These are the guys that cannot miss any time. They just can't. And you need them to do the heavy lifting. And, you know, to have this entire offseason in which McCaffrey was basically put in a bubble and not doing anything, for this to pop up after a full, you know, participation, how could you not raise an eyebrow with this, you know? And again, I hope it's nothing. Today's practice is more of a walkthrough than anything. They wouldn't be doing anything other than installing the game plan before they're getting ready to travel regardless. So any participation in today's practice would be basically if they had a practice today, this is what he would have done, right? So I guess we're going to find out in a little bit, but I agree with you. You know, Brian Robinson offers you 1, 2 down, you know, efficiency, and then it would be Garendo on third down again, and he's fallen out of favor. This completely changes the way that you would look at this game if he's not in there. So yeah, man, like it's a bummer to hear this, and you want to hope that it's them just being cautious, which it should be. Honestly, I just feel like Christian McCaffrey shouldn't practice. He should just be in the hyper chamber. You know, that's it. Just activate him on Sunday. Just get him up for the game. Like, we don't care. Like, he doesn't need to practice. But he's a maniac, and he wants to practice, and he never wants to come off the field. Like, someone's got to stop him from all of this, right? But, yeah, this absolutely changes the game if he's not going to be there.
They should borrow the immortal chamber from the Rams, since Stafford's not using it as much anymore. So that would be cool. And then also Tony here, a lower DEFCON equals closer to nuclear war. DEFCON 1 being nuclear war. So there you go. You got the order right. You got it in the correct
Learn
order.
Something every day.
Just want to clarify that. Listen, this is a Sprint Right Option podcast, Bryce. We like to know the important things, like which one's higher on the DEFCON ranking. So I just want to let you know that.
Works for me.
You mentioned that preseason game against the Chiefs and how good the offensive line worked against Kansas City, at least in the preseason. Seattle wasn't very good in terms of a run offense last season. The Niners defense wasn't very good in terms of a run defense last season. The Niners reworked a lot of reworking is a very nice way to say they redid their defensive line. The 3 of their first 5 draft picks were on the line, all that fun stuff. How do you feel about Kenneth Walker going into 2025? Do you think Seattle's done enough to make the run game better? Because I've always liked Kenneth Walker up there in Seattle. I think I'm more pro Kenneth Walker than a lot of Niners Twitter is. How do you feel about the run game going into 2025 and then also Sunday against the Niners defense that's been reworked quite a bit?
So the biggest thing for me that I think is going to improve this run game is actually the coaching staff they brought in, and Clint Kubiak, Rick Dennison, John Benton. The staff that was assembled understands this wide zone run scheme so well. Like, we're talking about Clint's basically a direct descendant from Gary, who with Mike Shanahan, Kyle's dad, basically outside of Bill Walsh are kind of the inventors of this style of running the football and the formations and the shifts and everything. So that was a huge part of this. The thing for me with Kenneth Walker is it's all about his health. Can he stay healthy? You guys are talking about CMC. Kenneth Walker's in the same boat. He barely made it through training camp without having a foot injury pop up here or something pop up there. And that's kind of been the story of his career so far. Like his rookie year really was the one year when Rashad Penny went down and he kind of took over and everything like that, was the one time he actually stayed relatively healthy. And you saw the production come with it. And then every year since then, it's been this up and down battle with how many games is he going to miss? Like I always chalk down Kenneth Walker to miss at least 3 games a year. You don't know where those 3 games are going to be, but they could be anywhere. In this system, I think Kenneth Walker has the opportunity to be a Pro Bowl level player and maybe even like a second team all pro, because his speed is such a underrated factor, I think, in some respects of his game. Like his shiftiness is great, and his ability to catch out of the backfield, but his ability to get from point A to point B quickly is huge. And the thing I'll say, I'll put this out. It's a bit of a bold take. I don't think Kenneth Walker will be a Seattle Seahawk in 2026.
Ooh, okay.
I think they love Zach Charbonnet, and Zach Charbonnet really looks like he's taken a step this year. Like he's a bit leaner, he's a bit more explosive, but his style of running is I put my foot in the ground and I'm going to go straight ahead. And in this zone scheme, that can be effective. And so I say that Kenneth Walker can be an all pro, but part of that comes with Kenneth Walker has to understand the scheme he's running in now. He can't get as cute as he's gotten in the past, where he likes to put on 3 or 4 moves. Like your foot gets in the hole and you go. And it's something CMC does so well, right? Like he gets and stresses that defense and gets them moving laterally. And then as soon as he sees that cutback lane, bam, foot's in the ground and I'm getting north-south as quickly as possible. And I think Charbonnet does that better than K9. And I think you'll see more of a split in Seattle's backfield than you have in past years between these two.
Oh God, don't say that, please. I like honestly, Kenneth Walker's my RB2 on my home league, and my God, is somebody fighting with a horn out there, Pasquini?
That's me. That's me. Yeah, sorry. Midtown Sacramento gets a little loud sometimes.
My goodness, man. It sounds like I thought it was my window, because usually, right here in the metropolitan New Jersey area, we're angry drivers. No, you hear all off season about Kubiak saying we want Walker in that CMC role. So that, to me, that puts you in a position where you're going to utilize him with passes, all that stuff. And that's the stuff that kind of makes me scary. The ability's there. Like, we know that. And obviously the injuries and all that stuff, it's interesting to hear that you believe that it's going to be more of a split. That's kind of scary, for fantasy managers, but, is what it is, But I wanted to say, like, I think the chess match that's going to happen here is the 49ers have had a horrible time setting the edge. This has got to be the first game that they have to start setting the edge here. Otherwise, they're going to start getting gashed out here. So you go out and you draft Mykel Williams for this game, for this reason, for this season. And so Robert Saleh and the boys, they're going to have to really, really be on that outside, because they can get gashed. Charbonnet has a little juice to him where he can run out on you, and Walker is not a slow guy either. He's actually a guy that like profiles like almost like a power back, but he's way faster than I think people give him credit for. So that's part of the chess match. Is this is and I'm not being biased here at all. This week is this game right here is the most fascinating battle of coordinators across the NFL. It's Kubiak against Saleh. It's Shanahan against McDonald. Hands down. This is the most fascinating 2 battles right here, and it's going to be a matter of who executes better, who's getting the upper hand, what's working, and all the adjustments. This game is, just because we cover the 49ers and you cover the Seahawks, obviously is the most important game of the week for us. I would say that if I was just a general NFL fan, I would be jacked to watch these 2 coordinators battles and go at it, and I think a lot of that has to do with how does Saleh make sure that he's setting that edge and he's keeping those outside zone, wide zone, lanes and those cutbacks down. The run defense and the run fits have got to be impeccable in this game, because it's only going to set up play action and only going to allow Sam Darnold to get some of those layup throws that Kubiak's going to throw out there for him.
The interesting part of this for Seattle's offense now, which you guys haven't seen us have for, excuse me, at least 7+ years, is a fullback. And a true fullback. And
wonder where you guys got that from.
No kidding, right? And watching Robbie Oots to me is hilarious, because he is kind of this hybrid of Ricard from Baltimore, and Kyle Juszczyk. He's athletic and can do some of the things that Juszczyk does, lining up as the shift tight end and do those things when you're in like a 12 personnel look, but you're not in a true 12 personnel look. And then he can be that he's like 6'3", 6'4", and he's like 270, and he's this big bulldozer of a guy. He makes a difference in the run game, and it came very clear in the preseason what having a fullback means to a run game again.
I like the fullback talk. Fullback talk gets me excited as a big Kyle Juszczyk guy. So any fullback talk, I'm good for. I'm happy Seattle's got one. I got a hypothetical question for you, Bryce.
Andrew. Before you give out that hypothetical,
yes.
What is Tony referencing here?
I did that Star Trek. Come on now, I'm not.
All right, cool. I just wanted to make sure.
I've never watched Star Trek, also, but like I know the reference.
All right, just wanted to make sure.
Hypothetical question, Bryce. If you were starting an NFL team tomorrow, and you had to pick between which quarterback would run your team, are you taking Geno Smith or Sam Darnold?
Ooh, that's a very good question.
Thank you.
I'm probably taking Sam Darnold. And the reason I'm taking Sam Darnold now, and I get everyone's going to go, well, Geno's had all these stats, and that's great, but you're talking about running an NFL franchise. I also have to look at the future of that franchise, and Sam Darnold is almost 10 years younger than Geno Smith. And I think Sam Darnold still has a floor or a ceiling he hasn't hit yet. He's starting to get there. And I think the arm talent in a lot of ways is similar. I think Sam's maybe a little bit more mobile and fleet of foot in some areas. But the one thing that stands out to me, and it kind of has come out through different reporters in Seattle, Brady Henderson being one, that Geno not being there outside of the Pete Carroll factor of him coming back in the NFL, it sounds like there was some, I wouldn't say great leadership characteristics coming from Geno, where when you listen to the way that the players, even like guys that have played with both Geno now and Sam, talk about Sam, there's a different leadership factor there with Sam. Like he comes in and he's one of the guys, and guys are comfortable with him, and he's not above anybody else, and just that kind of lunch pail worker mentality. And obviously you guys had him down in San Francisco. Yes, he was your backup, but he fit into that room being a guy that was a top 10 NFL pick. Okay, I'm taking the backseat to a guy that was essentially Mr. Irrelevant at one point. And yes, Purdy was playing quite well, but still that can be a bit of an ego hit, right? You're talking about a guy that was the number 1 overall pick to then, okay, I'm the backup to a guy that was a 7th round pick. It can be deflating. And Sam took that in stride, and then you saw what he did in Minnesota last year. And I know everyone wants to look at those last 2 games in Minnesota. I look at those and I say, focus more on the Detroit game than you do on the Rams game.
Okay.
Part of that factor is Kevin O'Connell got massively outcoached by Sean McVay and that defensive staff in that playoff game. And a big component to that was the DBs for the Rams shut down that receiving core of Minnesota. Like you watch the all-22, nobody is open. So Sam taking all those sacks, there were no checkdowns available to him. There weren't a lot of things that were really being schemed open. And the Rams played a great game on a defensive front against Sam Darnold and that Vikings defense. But to answer your question, Andrew, I would take Sam Darnold. I think there's some factors there that aren't coachable and give you a slight edge. And it's not to say like, oh yeah, because I have Sam Darnold, our team's going to be, amazing. But if I'm trying to build a culture and set a culture, I think Sam's a better option for that.
And that makes sense too, because I know a lot of Niner fans and football fans had fun with the Geno Smith flipping off Seahawks fans in the playoffs, or in the preseason, not the playoffs, the preseason. But that to me doesn't scream good leader. So that kind of fits with what you're saying there as well. That to me, a good leader probably just ignore, especially since the preseason game, just kind of ignores it, lets it go through. But it was, as a Niner fan, I enjoyed the imagery.
Oh, so I completely disagree. I love Trent Williams flipping off the Seahawks when coming out of the tunnel. Like that's my captain.
So it's funny because that particular guy has been there for like years, and he always has a sign. Like he is known in the Seahawks community for being that guy. But what's interesting is I was at the Minnesota Vikings game last year where Sam Darnold beat us really badly with that 4-minute drill, throw down the field to Jefferson, splitting the cover 2. But after that game, which I don't think's talked about enough, is there was an interaction between Geno and a bunch of Seattle fans behind the bench. And Geno was losing it and being restrained by teammates. And there was much of a love-hate relationship with Geno. You're taking one over for us. And 2, in my opinion, last year was Geno's most bipolar season as a quarterback of the Seattle Seahawks. And what I say with that is 2022, you saw this resurgence and you saw he was beloved, right? Like Seattle was supposed to be 4-12 if we were lucky after trading Russ. And he got us into the playoffs and we played you guys, and yeah, we lost, and I expected that to happen. But it was kind of this resurgence, and it was all about him being the comeback player of the year, and hey, they wrote me off, but I don't write back kind of a thing. And then in the next year, you started to see some of the shine come off the armor, I'd say, with Gino and the love in the community for him, because there were opportunities where Gino squandered some games with bad turnovers and things. And then last year it got worse. And the worst game, in all honesty, was the Rams home game we had, where he threw 2 interceptions in the red zone, one that was returned for a pick 6, which were just horrible decisions. Everything about it was bad. It wasn't, and like the play calling wasn't great. Ryan Grubb was a disaster, but those were mistakes that ultimately ended up costing Seattle the division in a lot of ways, was that game, because it took down to the 5th tiebreaker for the Rams to get in over us in the playoffs last year with a similar record. And that game, I think, and there were more throughout the season, but that really stuck in a lot of the minds of Seattle fans. And that's why I think you see this love-hate. There's people in Seattle, like there's 2 spectrums to this. If you have a bell curve, there are people that think Geno Smith is almost a Hall of Fame level top 10 NFL quarterback. There are people that actually cannot stand Geno Smith. And then there's a group of us like myself that are kind of in the middle that understood what Geno was and understood, yeah, there's potentially going to be a better option. Like, we're going to kind of sit in this purgatory with Geno because he's just good enough to keep you in games and win some games, but he's also bad enough that you'll never ascend to being a true playoff contending, Super Bowl contending team. And so I was fine with that. Like, I understood what the purpose was. Geno was supposed to be the bridge. Now, the bridge for the longest time, as I said, was kind of like this abyss. We didn't know. And that's what I appreciate with what John Schneider has pivoted to now with Sam Darnold, is you have Sam Darnold, but you now have Jalen Milroe as that potential bridge option too. And so that's where I think Seattle's really pivoted at their quarterback room compared to where they've been in the past.
I've always contended that Geno and Sam Darnold are in the same tier. And based on, and not based on, draft status and being able to turn their careers around, just the tier group of quarterbacks. And funny enough, I was, again, talking about the turnover worthy throw rates against, certain coverages. It's funny, they're back to back. 3.8% overall for Geno Smith turnover worthy throws, and right behind him, Sam Darnold 4.1. But what's striking is this, and I'm gonna pass it after I run through some numbers real quick. Against cover 0, which is man with a huge blitz, Geno Smith's turnover worthy throw rate 10.5%. That's huge. That's massive, right? 5.9% for Sam Darnold. Cover 1, which is man with a single high safety, is 3.8% for Geno Smith, 3.1% for Sam Darnold. Cover 2, man, Geno Smith had 0 turnover worthy throws. 0.0 is his percentage. That seems good. 6.2% for Sam Darnold. Now, on the flip side, when we get into zone, cover 2 is where we're going to start. 1.2% for Geno Smith, 4.7% for Sam Darnold. 5.0% for Geno Smith in cover 3, which is three secondary members up top and 4 underneath. 3.3% for Sam Darnold, 3.1% in cover 4 for Geno Smith, 5.9% for Sam Darnold, 1.6% in cover 6, which we have a debate whether cover 6 is real, like, baby birds and stuff like that, and 4.5% with Sam Darnold. I think what I'm trying to correlate here is Sam Darnold had Justin Jefferson last year, and obviously that's your man beater, right? And he has high turnover worthy throws, but I think again where he struggles is throwing those complex schemes in terms of the zone, right? Like making him diagnose on zones, right? Like, and I think Geno, when you throw in the struggles that you guys had at offensive line, and at times, his erratic play is why you see such a high number on cover 0 blitzes, right? So it's just interesting how they're back to back, and I have them considered in the same tier. And week to week, I can flip either of them, right? Like, I think it's great what Geno did, and I think that Geno, he did a good job of putting himself in a conversation of that's a starting quarterback when he literally just went from an afterthought. Same thing with Sam, right? He can't praise the 49ers enough. Like, stop putting a microphone in front of his face, anything like that. And my G, that's turnover worthy throws. And for, again, it's a PFF thing, right? Like, but it's essentially putting the ball in harm's way. Right? Like, it may end as an incompletion, but that was a throw that you probably should have held on to or not made. Like, that's the way that we're going to look at this. Yes, it's not an interception. Yes, it's not a turnover, but it's about process and results, right? And I'm a big process over results guy, right? Like, you can have a result. Didn't mean that you went through the right things to get there, and that's what you really want to see. So, yeah, I mean, it's just funny. I just think that the 49ers are going to, they're going to have to generate pass rush with 4. And for the most part, if you're gonna send an extra blitzer, it's gonna have to be on man. Now, can you man up on the backside? We're gonna find that out. So it's gonna be interesting because I do think Sam struggles a little bit more with the zone concepts and understanding where to go with the football there. But you have to get there with 4. Right? Like, you're not going to be able to blitz from those things. I don't know if you want to sit there and lay back with the 4, and I don't know if the 49ers have the firepower to get there on 4 unless it's with their NASCAR package, which will be in obvious passing situations.
So it's interesting, those numbers that because I've diagnosed them as well. And the one thing for me that really stands out with the Sam Darnold versus Geno Smith conversation in those numbers, especially last year, is Sam's numbers were doing quite well until the injury to the left tackle and Minnesota's run game disappeared. And when they disappeared, that's the big thing. Sam Darnold needs a run game. Mm-hmm. Geno Smith last year had no run game. And everything, and I think some of the issues with Geno in that, cover 0, cover 1 kind of thing where they're bringing the pressure and it's man. Ryan Grubb had no real man beaters, no quick hits for him to get rid of the ball. Everything was 10 plus yards downfield and deep concepts, because Grubb came from having the best O-line in college football at Washington, Michael Penix, and 3 NFL draftable receivers in McMillan, Odunze, and Polk. So he could throw it up and do those things. And that's where it's really interesting to see what Sam Darnold does this year with a competent offensive coordinator and a philosophy of, hey, we're going to run the ball. We're going to give you play action. And in the same tone, it'll be the same thing with Geno in Vegas is you don't have DK Metcalf. You don't have JSN. You've got Jacoby Myers and now the retired Amari Cooper that left, and you've got Brock Bowers. So you don't have guys that can go deep down the field and, run these things. So you got to be quicker. So it'll be very interesting, Jason, because I really like those numbers as a good perspective of where these two are and how similar they are. It'll be interesting to see, now that they're both in completely new situations, who actually numbers stay similar or who actually get better.
Bryce, we really appreciate you taking your time out of your day to join us, talk 49ers Seahawks. We're kind of getting to the end of the episode here. Predictions, we're going to give you final score predictions. But before we do, Bryce, can you let the people know where they can find you, where they can find all your content, what your Twitter, all that fun stuff is before we get to our predictions?
Yeah, sure. And thanks again, guys, for having me on. Love talking ball with guys that know how to talk ball, which is great. And for me, it's the Hawk's Eye Podcast. You can find me on YouTube, Spotify as well. Same title, the Hawk's Eye Podcast. And then as well, my Twitter handle is the Seahawks Eye. It just recently changed. So that's where you guys can find me on Twitter if you ever have any questions or anything. But yeah, started the channel about, I'd say a month and a half ago. I left the prior channel I was on, and it's growing at a rapid pace. So coming on and talking with you guys is a lot of fun and definitely helps out my channel. So I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
I love that. It's good to hear that I have football knowledge, despite me saying I took Christian McCaffrey with the 9th pick in one of my fantasy drafts. So the guy makes me feel better. Niners, Seahawks, Sunday, 1:05 p.m. kickoff. Niners currently listed as a 1.5-point favorite up there in Seattle. Bryce, how we usually do it is just who's going to win final by what score. Pretty simple, nothing too crazy. What is your prediction week 1 Niners Seahawks?
So I've gone back and forth on this. The injury report for you guys is kind of what swayed it in my favor for a little bit more. I have it as 27-17 Seattle. Okay. The reason I say that is the young D-line that you guys now have that you've alluded to, and seeing if we can run the ball. If Seattle can establish the run game and put pressure on Purdy and not allow Ricky Pearsall and MVS and that to get separation, I think it leads to our favor. Especially, it sounds like there's going to be a good Seattle crowd there. Like, not a lot of tickets were for resale, which has been something that's been a big token of conversation up there in Seattle here is, hey, we can't let the visitors come in here. And I know there'll be Niners fans there. There always are, and that's fine.
They're going to be undercover cops.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to be undercover cops too. But yeah, so that's my prediction. I think it's that, but I don't think it's like Seattle's up 27-0 and the Niners come back. I think it's going to be a tough game up until probably the last 8 minutes of the fourth quarter, and maybe Seattle gets it's 24-17. It's a one-score game. Seattle kicks a field goal to kind of put it out of reach that way. That's kind of my prediction.
Perfect. I'm gonna pretend like the Christian McCaffrey news didn't happen yesterday because I just want to ignore it. I'm gonna go 23-21 Niners. I'm really high on Michael Williams, and I'm really high just on the idea of Robert Saleh coming back. I refuse to believe the Niners defense is gonna be as bad as it was last year. I'm also on a 49ers podcast, so of course I'm gonna pick the Niners to win. I'm gonna go Niners 23, Seahawks 21. Close one up in Seattle.
I hate week one in general. I hate predicting week one. I generally hate it. It's always the wonkiest games. Like last year, the Patriots beat the Bengals in week one. Who the hell would have thought that, right? And then even last night, right? The Eagles, by all accounts, should have massacred the Dallas Cowboys. And then that game is gonna get weird. Because you know what? The only thing weirder than week one is divisional games. And that's another thing. Those games are always weird and they're always closer, which is why the 49ers are favored by 1.5. That it's a pick 'em. It's a pick 'em given the home, the away split. So look, they wouldn't let me back in these 49ers streets if I picked the Seattle Seahawks in this game. So again, don't it's not biased, but I've got it 24-20, and I think that this game is going to come down to whether the 49ers have to go down the field or stop Seattle. Like it's going to come down to the last drive. I get very nervous about these type of games based on X's and O's and what Mike McDonald can do schematically. And I cited all those numbers before, but I get even more weirded out about week one in itself. And the fact that the 49ers under Kyle Shanahan, aside from a handful of years, maybe less than a handful of years, tend to start slowly. And they tend to come out of the gates. They may win the game, but you didn't sit there and say, man, they're firing on all cylinders, right? And this is a season where the 49ers cannot afford to stumble out of the gates. And we can't be here week 3, week 4 saying, they're rounding into shape. And they're no. There's a divisional game week 1. Hate that it was placed here. But I've got to say the 49ers 24-20. And, we'll find out who nailed it, by 7:00 my time on the East Coast on Sunday.
It was a fun episode, Bryce. Again, go follow Bryce at the Seahawks Eye on Twitter. Same name on YouTube. Excuse me, the Hawkeyes, the Hawkeye with Bryce Coots on YouTube. Make sure you go follow that. Great content there, and always good to keep an eye on the division rivals and all that stuff. So, Bryce, we really, really appreciate you joining us today, taking time. I said it already. I'll say it again. So, thank you very much,
Bryce. Real quick, let them know what we got going on. Talking about divisional rivals, let them know what we got going on tonight.
Right. So once a month now, it'll be usually the first Friday or second Friday of the month. Myself, Jason, Blaine Grisack, and Blake Murphy are going to get together for the Gridiron Gauntlet live NFC West show. So we're all going to come together, discuss the NFC West, what our teams are up to, what's been going on, and kind of give everyone some insight. We're all different content creators and such. So it'll be a fun way to keep tabs on the division. So that'll be live tonight at 6:00 Pacific time, 9:00 Eastern time.
Perfect. So be sure to go check that out. Thank you again, Bryce. We really appreciate it. Jason Aponte, as always.
Let's go Niners.
Let's go Niners.